I call it the pebble in my shoe. My writing has always come out of my life. Something happens, I learn about something, and you know, like every writer, there's a reluctance to writing. It's a job, it's huge. You're engaging with this material sometimes for years. And there's a kind of, you know, looking for the reason to stop writing, you know, about that, because it's gonna be hard work. So it's the kind of thing that it's a pebble in my shoe, and I try to shake it out, and I can't shake it out. I keep thinking about it. It keeps worrying me. It keeps concerning me, or I'm still curious about it. And so the only way to get the pebble out of my shoe is to write about it. And so, you know, it's often when you're invited to things, people think, gosh, you're a writer. You must know a lot. And I say, I'm not a writer because I know things, but because I want to find things out. I was not a reader growing up. Grew up in the Dominican Republic in an oral culture, 1950s dictatorship. Reading was not encouraged, as it often isn't in a dictatorship. And I was a girl. The most that people wanted from girls is a high school education. So I didn't grow up in a reading culture, but I grew up in a storytelling culture. The one book that I remember being given by the one aunt in the family who read was The Arabian Nights. And it was an incredible experience for me to read about a girl in a culture that was similar to our own, a girl who was brown skinned, might have been Dominican, and she was a storyteller. And she saved her life in a dictatorship that was killing off all the women by telling stories. And I just couldn't believe this. And the stories were wonderful and mesmerizing. And I think even though I wouldn't have said, oh, I want to be a writer, I wanted to be someone like that. I was writing all these little stories, and I had a wonderful editor, Algonquin Books of Chapel Hill, Shannon, and she read them, and she said, well, you know, they all tell a larger story. And again, I thought, how have people done this? So I remember the Dubliners. You know, I remember bigger stories put together out of smaller stories. I remember Scheherazade and the Arabian Nights. And I thought, how about if they're stories that connect with each other and they tell a larger story? But then the idea of starting with the present and going backwards, I was thinking the way you structure a book is also the way you want the reader to be thinking about the material. And I wanted my reader to be thinking like an immigrant. And an immigrant is here now, let's say in the United States of America, but there's always the going back in memory and nostalgia to where you came from and tracking yourself forward from there. So that was the idea for the structure of starting with the present and going back to the beginning of memory, where you came from. So that was the whole impetus behind it. Because that first book had such an impact on me, to be maybe a first book in somebody's or family's hands that aren't used to books, maybe, that don't have the luxury of a collection or a library, and where, you know, I will be handled and touched